We're getting it done. What's up, gamers? This is the flag of the great state of California. This is the state I have grown up in and lived in for my entire life, and one thing is quite front and center on the flag. Can you guess what it is? It's the bear. Obviously, it's the giant bear. This right here is a California grizzly bear, Ursus arctos horribilis, meaning horrible bear, a species that once roamed as far south as central Mexico. Can you believe that? As you likely know, this species is extinct in most of its native range and has been for a long time. The last grizzly in California was possibly killed in Tulare County in 1922. The last known possible sighting was in Yosemite in 1924. That was likely the last of this incredible species, but for almost 100 years, these massive animals became a cultural spectacle. Oh, in case you couldn't tell, this is... I'm still working on my larger video, so here's another content care package for you all. Also, I've just been so busy with school and work and stuff, so I'm finally getting back at it. Sorry about the wait. When American prospectors began arriving in California in 1848 for the gold rush, there were likely around 10,000 grizzly bears in the territory. In less than a century, they were all killed. But in those 80 or so years, they were something special, and their interactions with American settlers made up a seriously weird time and fascinating cultural moment in American history. You can think of them almost as the dragon of the American frontier, an almost mythical beast to settlers. I think we should get into some of the weird and downright disgustingly cruel antics these settlers got into with these beautiful creatures before their extinction. This video takes information from the book Day of the Grizzly, a very good read for anyone interested. Firstly, let's get into the history of these bears and their interactions with those who came before the Americans, because, believe it or not, there were innumerable indigenous peoples living here before the Spanish and the Mexicans, let alone the Americans. That isn't acknowledged enough. We were not first, not even second or third. Just keep that in mind. Indigenous Californians had been interacting with grizzly bears for millennia. Because of this, they were a central part of native religions, myths, and general life. I found a pretty awesome source on the grizzly's significance to native religion and culture from the University of Ottawa from 1996, titled Grizzly Bears, Spiritual Power and Shamanism in Native Cultures of the Pacific Slope of North America by Bernard G. Comu. It's a long one, and it'll be linked in the description. This portion of the video will just be a short summary of the information provided, but I suggest you go check it out for yourself. Also, I got a new lens. I'm sorry if it's messing up the focus. I hate this thing. It's so stupid. Animals played a large role in indigenous American worldviews. Often seen as representatives of the supernatural, the animal kingdom held a special place in native cultures. While there weren't exactly strict hierarchies for most cultures, almost every group revered some animals more than others for various reasons. Generally, those who were seen as significant food sources like buffalo, and those that had the ability to kill humans were revered more highly than others. Naturally, this meant that the bear was commonly seen as spiritually powerful, if not the most spiritually powerful. It varied between cultures, obviously. Some southwestern native groups viewed the mountain lion as the most significant. Much of this perceived spiritual power was based on physical and behavioral attributes, both of which the bear has a lot of. The California Grizzly in particular could weigh up to 1,200 pounds and stood 4 feet tall at the shoulder and 8 feet tall when standing upright. They could run up to 35 miles an hour over short distances and must have been absolutely terrifying in person. On top of this, the fact that for many native groups, bears were the only animal around that would routinely kill humans added even more reason to revere them. Bears also are interesting due to their tendency to act very human, if that makes sense, at least in comparison to other animals in North America. They walk upright. Their use of forepaws, their footprints, and overall anatomy struck a strong chord with native peoples. Their human-like attributes were possibly the largest driving force in their perceived spiritual power. I mean, if you just look at a bear's eyes, I don't know, it's creepy. They also were fascinated with the fact that bears hibernate, which I'd say is very human too. Ask me to get out of bed when the weather is like this, and I'll tell you to kill yourself. Many observances and customs would stem from their fascination with bears. Bear dances, intricate bear hunting rituals, ceremonial use of certain bear body parts, ritual burial with bear parts, the development of bear clans and societies, among many more. Shamans saw bears as an extremely important part of their practice due to their spiritual power. These practices and influences were all subjective from culture to culture, but grizzly bear shaman seems to have been a common role among Pacific Slope peoples, among other types of shamans like antelope shamans, snake shamans, and badger shamans. I'd personally be a quail shaman just so I could go around making fun noises like this. This plays into the concept of spirit helpers. Bernard Camus mentions, quote, "Although some cultures may have acknowledged that shamans were capable of acquiring more than one spiritual helper at a time, and therefore would not have recognized grizzly bear shamans or rattlesnake shamans in the strict sense of these terms, in each case, the experience of spiritual power and the abilities attributed to the shaman were very specific, in accordance with the prescribed cultural properties of each of his or her acquired spirit helpers." This means that essentially a spirit helper would aid the shaman in some way pertaining to what animal said help was. For example, a grizzly bear shaman was widely recognized as primarily being able to heal attacks from grizzly bears, while an antelope shaman would be able to charm or coax antelope toward hunters. In short, a shaman's abilities would be directly linked to whatever animal gave them spiritual power. Oh, fucking kill myself. Damn it. I hate this new camera lens I got because I accidentally broke the other one. And I can't put my teleprompter on it. And all it does is just try and figure out the focus. There are bigger problems in the world. People are starving to death. Since I can't use my teleprompter, I have just like my script pulled up right here. So if you see me going like this, don't think I'm unprofessional. I'll figure it out. I'm sorry. So shamans were able to activate these abilities by becoming what they called spirit helpers, either literally or metaphorically, and also traveling between spirit realms, which is a very complicated topic that I can't really get into, but I think I've talked a lot about this already. So let's get into the first European encounters with these giant bears. Also, shout out to Bernard Camus for the study. Very cool. Thank you for making it public access. Anyway, the first European records of grizzly bears comes from the Spanish after they began colonizing California in 1769. To say the least, it didn't go great. The first expedition was led by Gaspar de Portola in order to establish two forts, one at Port San Diego, the other at Monterey, in order to curb growing English and Russian influence in the region. Expedition members mentioned seeing grizzlies coming down to the coast to feed on beached whales, which is pretty interesting. Real quick, let's get into a bit of background on these animals. The California grizzly was pretty similar to other brown bears. Largely omnivorous, they preferred to feed on plant matter and berries, but began to quickly adopt cattle into their diet when Europeans arrived. They were primarily solitary, except for mothers and their cubs, but foraging groups of up to 40 were spotted sometimes. They hibernate during the winter months, we know that, usually from December to April, with cubs being born usually in January. Cubs would stay with their mothers for around 3 to 4 years, the mother remaining celibate in that time. Mating season for these bears was June and July, which, as you may expect, was a contentious time. By the way, what time of year is it in 1769? Oh, July. On their way up to Monterey, the Spanish encountered many bear tracks and killed a small number of them, which were apparently delicious. And these bears were moderately sized, but they gave them the wrong impression of their true size. Near San Luis Obispo, the expedition came across a large group of foraging bears. Since they had only seen and easily killed smaller individuals, they charged at this group confidently before realizing that was a bad idea. Quote, "Some of the soldiers, attracted by the chase because they had been successful on 2 other occasions, mounted their horses and this time succeeded in shooting one. They, however, experienced the fierceness and anger of these animals. When they feel themselves to be wounded, headlong they charge the hunter, who can only escape by the swiftness of his horse, for the first burst of speed is more rapid than one might expect from the bulk and awkwardness of such brutes. The one they succeeded in killing received 9 bullet wounds before it fell, and this did not happen until they hit him on the head. Other soldiers mounted on mules had the boldness to fight one of these animals. They fired at him 7 or 8 times, and doubtless he died from the wounds, but he maimed 2 of the mules, and by good fortune, the men who were mounted upon them extricated themselves." This is one of the earliest accounts of these animals from Europeans. Of course, the bears were just defending themselves. What else would they be doing? But those first few bears they had killed were bush league in comparison, and the Spanish were now well aware of how ferocious these creatures really were. Over time, as Spain began to establish more and more forts and taking up more land in California, they began to give land grants to individuals, also as mission lands spread all over the place. The largest industry for decades in California under both Spain and Mexico would be cowhides and beef tallow, leading to massive numbers of cattle taking over the landscape. The Grizzlies saw this and said, "Look guys, the white people brought food." The bears would become a massive burden on rancheros and vaqueros, who labeled them as a pest that needed to be exterminated. A little ridiculous in my opinion. You brought the food to them. Just build a bigger fence. Jesus. As California transitioned from being a Spanish colony to a Mexican colony, the new Mexican government decided the bears needed to be taken care of. They sent vaqueros and bear hunters to go to the countryside, wrangle up these beasts, and kill them to prevent future incidents. As you may expect, this didn't always work out. A common occurrence saw hunters being chased up a tree by an angry bear, which was creatively termed being treed, which I think we should just use now for either being bricked up or getting high. Who up stripping they log, or something, fucking whatever. Just subscribe. I know you're already thinking about it. You don't need to ask my permission. Let's skip ahead a bit to where the hijinks get really hijinky, because the main character of the universe has arrived: America. After 1848, American settlers began migrating into California in massive numbers to take advantage of the gold rush. I personally don't believe that, because to me, American history didn't start until our beautiful Barack was elected in 2008. Stay woke. Americans had a bit of a different mindset than the Spanish or Mexicans, certainly from the indigenous people. That is to say, most of them were just batshit insane. Here's an example. One day, someone said, "Hey guys, what if we put a bear in an arena and made it fight a lion?" And that's what they did. Grizzly bears in cages to be shown off at festivals, grizzlies caught in the wild and kept as pets, which never ended well, mind you. Grizzly bears fighting against dogs, panthers, people, fucking lions, like I said. Grizzly bear chair given to President Andrew Johnson. What? I mean, like, what? This doesn't even look comfortable. Californians had a really serious obsession with these animals in an odd, sadistic way. The Bear Flag Revolt in Sonoma had the symbol of a bear on it as basically its mascot. The American settlers mythologized these creatures to the point of mass slaughter, and what we call pioneers had a mindset of dominance over nature. I speak on this more in my video about historical narratives. Link. Let's get into that. Here's just a handful of interesting stories from the time of American settlementation in California, leading up to the Grizzlies' extinction. Content warning, it gets kind of graphic, and it's very sad. I think first we got to talk about bear baiting, a common practice by Mexican vaqueros, basically seen as a sport to them. It involved several vaqueros on horses overrunning a grizzly, lassoing it, and either capturing or killing it. The vaqueros were notably some of, if not the most skilled horsemen in the world. All of this awful, awful shit remained pretty frequent when Americans arrived. In 1841, Governor-in-Chief of the Hudson's Bay Company, Sir George Simpson, visited California during a voyage around the world. He was impressed with the region's agricultural capabilities and went to several notable places, including early Los Angeles, which he described as a den of thieves, with a population of 1,500 people, and was, quote, the abode of the lowest drunkards and gamblers of the country. So nothing's changed, huh? That's my little jab into the made-up NorCal and SoCal beef. It's real, I promise. Go Giants. Team sucks ass. He did think the region was pretty, though. What he didn't think was pretty, however, was the grizzly bear arenas. He's quoted from his notes saying, quote, "In this village, the custom of making the bull and the bear bait each other, though common to the whole province, is peculiarly popular and fashionable, a custom which, by excluding human combatants from the arena, banishes entirely that higher interest that arises from introducing of man and man's avenging arms into the national entertainment of the old country. In Spain, the cruel spectacle involves the display of dexterity and courage, while in California it possesses no redeeming quality to raise it above the dignity of a cockfight. The savage sport ends only with the death of one or other of the combatants, and perhaps both. For the tortures which, when at Sonoma, we saw inflicted by means of the lasso, we could find something of an exercise in the well-founded pride of the performers." What does that say? But we cannot fancy no palliation for the delight with which the Californians, on the safe side of an impassable barrier, we said to gloat on the dying throes of at least one of the two caged brutes. Then there's this guy from 1904 who says, "The best fight I'm gonna do this in accent. The best fight I remember was in the early 1840s in honor of the visit of the great Mexican general to Santa Barbara. The Indians brought in a monster grizzly, the largest we ever seen, and the combatant provided a wild bull, a great red fellow with fine horns and the temper of a fiend." We have fun. We have fun here on the Austin Time channel. When Americans arrived, they began to set themselves apart from the Spanish and Mexicans in the grizzly hunting scene. The Mexican vaqueros, as I said, were extremely skilled horsemen, and the capturing of a grizzly was lauded as an activity that required intelligence, quick reflexes, and teamwork. Then Americans came in and did what they do best, just saying fuck it and finding ways to kill an entire population of animals as efficiently as possible. That was usually done through poisoning, unfortunately. Still, Americans took part in hunting grizzlies, usually when they found evidence of one near a settlement. They also labeled them as pests that should be killed as soon as possible to prevent future incidents. In the fall of 1843, a man named Nathan Coombs, who laid out the town of Napa in the Northern Bay Area, found some grizzly tracks near Cache Creek. He mounted a party to find the bear. When they found it, Coombs, on his slightly broken-in colt, got a rise out of the bear, which attacked his horse, forcing him to fall off of it. The bear grabbed hold of Coombs and tore the skin off of his arm, and he seemed doomed for a grisly death. That was until a new assailant joined the commotion, one small enough to grab onto the bear's backside and hold on. His name was Tinker, and he bit into the bear's butt so hard and did not let go that the bear began spinning around like a dog trying to catch its own tail. Tinker was a dog, if you couldn't tell. Eventually, with the bear distracted, one of the party's men managed to shoot the bear to death. Speaking of dogs, they were probably one of the best tools that these hunters had for combating bears. They were able to distract the beast, nipping at its legs and barking, and save the lives of countless humans while often losing its own in the process. "I once knew a pioneer," said pioneer Isaac Jones Wistar, who killed many grizzlies in the Sonoma and Russian River valleys and rarely declined to attack one with the sole assistance of a very small, noisy terrier dog. The wary but irrepressible animal had been taught to remain at heel till his master fired, and then make straight for the enemy's rear, where he kept up such an insulting and alarming snarling and snapping as to tempt the bear to waste precious time by attending to his cased forest. I'm assuming that's supposed to say foremost, giving the hunter time to reload and get in a second shot. Next stop, the lovely town of Bakersfield, 1875. A half-native man named Juan Jose had become famous in the Tehachapi mountain region for his many, many bear fights. He was credited with killing 20 bears with nothing but a long knife as he worked as a shepherd in a heavily bear, wolf, and cougar-infested area. I hate when people say that. "Oh, don't go in the water, it's shark-infested." Dog, they live there. What? Like many before and after him, Juan Jose's hopes and dreams would be dashed as he entered Bakersfield. The Bakersfield Southern Californian wrote on April 15th, quote, "Juan, the famous bear fighter from San Emigdio, rode his point into town the other day. He looks like a half moon when on his horse without a saddle or bridle." Reporting on his most recent fight with a bear just outside of Bakersfield, they wrote, "His last fight was with a grizzly in the San Emigdio Canyon. He left his camp early in the morning, being awakened by the crashing of the brush. The tracks of the bear showed that he had been close to him, and had probably gone off offended by the smell of his toes." Yeah, I guess he would sleep without boots on. Juan took his rifle, buckled on his belt and knife, and followed the tracks. And it wouldn't be long until Juan found exactly what he was looking for. The gentleman in grizzly gray presented himself in the most respectable attitude, on his hind feet. Juan responded to this respectful show by immediately attempting to shoot the bear in the heart, which caused the bear to attack him. The bear grabbed his gun from his hand and landed on top of Juan, who started stabbing it near its bowels. The bear came on top, and setting his teeth closer to the Indian's belt, curled him into the shape he now retains. The last twist of the knife, however, began to tell. The bear rolled over alongside the Indian, and in his death struggles raked his paw across the fellow's front, from his forehead to his knees, which took the skin over his eyes and came near carrying away his ribs. Jesus fucking Christ. Some fucking how, Juan managed to survive this entire thing. where he was rescued by a vaquero and brought to a home. After 3 months of recovery, he finally made his way to Bakersfield, where the story started. His body was permanently bent into a half-moon crescent shape after that. God, this video is such a mess. We're just hanging out, so who cares? Let's speedrun some other interesting encounters really quick. In 1872, an unnamed man was ambushed by a bear in his camp, as reported on by the San Francisco Daily Evening Bulletin. I'm sorry, I ate Chipotle. I keep burping. The bear grabbed him from his tent, bit a chunk out of his leg, and attempted to bury him in a small hand or paw-made ditch, which apparently is a thing that bears do with food. Luckily for this guy, he managed to crawl his way out of the bear-dug grave and back to his horse, where his wounds were treated by a doctor, and he seems to have survived. I imagine that, like, when Kraven buries Black Suit Spider-Man, because he thought he killed him, and he's just like, this. Yeah. A German guy named, hang on, Lutz Schillerin, hang on. German. Paste.
Laertes Schillerin. Laertes Schillerin.
Laertes Schillerman. Wait, no. You heard the computer lady. Basically, the German guy, he was jumped by a grizzly in Calaveras County, where he was literally torn to pieces after shooting it. His companions, who were at a short distance, hearing the report of his rifle, supposing he had killed the deer, ran to meet him, but on arriving at the spot, they perceived a monster grizzly leisurely walking away, and upon the ground in an expiring condition, really, the mutilated head and body of their companion, his arms and legs having been torn asunder. They attempted to kill the bear but were unsuccessful, from the Calaveras Chronicle in 1852. I don't know why this is also funny to me. If I ever get mutilated like that, I want it to be described as I was torn asunder. Oh my god. You know, what's interesting about these encounters, which saw a pretty sharp uptick in the 1850s as more American settlers began showing up, is that pretty much like all of them could have been avoided, because in almost every single instance, it's the humans that started, and they find out. While grizzlies were unpredictable, as all animals are, I think most people know that they are mostly omnivorous, preferring plants and berries over meat. An interesting fact here, grizzly bear meat was apparently quite popular on the frontier. Early on, bear meat was often the only food source available to Spanish explorers, as discussed earlier. During the age of rancheros, a steady supply of beef didn't require the worm-infested delicacy of bear. It began to become more popular again during the American invasion. Well, how was it? It's debated, but apparently it was pretty good. According to most accounts, like this guy, Franklin Buck, who said it was, quote, the finest meal I've ever eaten, so tender and juicy. And then this guy, Daniel B. Woods, said, quote, with a generous slice of the savory meat was placed before me on the ground with a bottle of brandy. The latter I eschewed, while the former I chewed, and I found it delicious, similar to young pork. Look at some Dr. Seuss shit. Weapons were developed specifically to kill bears, like this bear hunting rifle that became commonplace among settlers. These had much larger calibers than other guns usually seen among Winchesters, rolling block rifles, but were eventually largely replaced by cap and ball rifles that were muzzle-loaded. From the San Diego Daily Union in 1871, quote, Big bear killed near San Luis Rey. We learned that a bear weighing over 1,000 pounds was killed in San Luis Rey Valley the other day. Mr. Gash, a young German, gave Bruin the coup de grace with a ball in the brain just as the bear was in the act of springing at him. Ball in the brain. Eventually, in the 1870s and 1880s, the bears themselves were becoming more cautious, but as more and more settlers began participating in the bear hunting tradition, their numbers just continued to drop. They were now outnumbered by settlers, looking to kill as many as possible. In 1873, you could bet $100 or even $500 to wrestle a bear yourself in Marysville. Some settlers claim to have killed upwards of 266 bears themselves, sometimes as many as 8 or 10 a week in the 1860s. By the 1890s, it was becoming evident even to Californians at the time that their numbers were quickly dwindling. The frontier was fading, with cities and towns becoming more developed day by day. Intense and large-scale agriculture was taking over, leaving no habitat for many animals in large parts of California. With their disappearance in most places, the grizzlies took on a legendary status, a beast of dangerous proportion, a prize kill, the dragon of the American West. The last mention of a bear killing was on November 8, 1929, in the Corning, California Observer, though another grizzly was reportedly killed in the Santa Barbara Mountains in 1931, and some tracks were found in Yosemite a few years later. By then, the California Grizzly was officially gone. So, takeaway. Yeah, this video was a mess, and I apologize for that. I felt the need to get something out as I work on my other video that's being delayed by being a history major and the billion essays that you apparently have to do for that. The story of the California Grizzly is a sad pinnacle of humanity's hubris and disregard for the lives of creatures other than ourselves. Was complete and total extermination the only option? Why do we always go to that? How do we let ourselves get so wrapped up in mythologizing a species? Economic reasons are not justification for purposeful extinction of a species to me. A big question is if we should reintroduce the bears back into California, and I say, why the hell not? They were an essential part of the ecosystem, and with constant habitat destruction and overuse of natural resources, like sending all of our water down to supply lawns in LA, or all of our water to grow walnut trees, nobody likes walnuts. Nate is allergic to walnuts. They're stupid. We need to do everything we can to rebuild this ecosystem that we have so ignorantly destroyed. Well, I hope you enjoyed this hodgepodge of a video. I'm going to put all of my efforts into my larger video from now on, so I might be gone for a bit again, but it will come, I promise. Alright, like and subscribe if you want. It's up to you. I hope you have a lovely day, and thank you for watching. I'm Austin in Time, and I'm allergic to penicillin. Sorry I was gone for so long. I had a lot to do. Please don't stop donating to my Patreon. It would make me sad.